The Charlotte Ledger Podcast is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network.
Today's episode is presented by PBS Charlotte's Unspun program, helping you learn what politicians are thinking but not saying, hosted by former Governor Pat McCrory. Welcome to the Charlotte Ledger Podcast. I'm Ashley Fahey, managing editor of the Charlotte Ledger. To find out more about the Charlotte Ledger, visit thecharlotteledger.com. It's officially music festival season, but this spring, Charlotte won't play host to a major 3-day live music festival like it has for the past 2 years. I'm joined today by Rachel Black, a freelance journalist who regularly writes for the Charlotte Ledger. She and I are talking about what happened to the Lovin Life Music Festival, which abruptly went on pause this year after festival organizers Southern Entertainment hosted 2 festivals that drew big headliners and big crowds in 2024 and 2025 to Uptown Charlotte. For the Ledger, Rachel recently took a deep dive into why the festival suddenly went on pause, whether Lovin Life could come back, and what the festival's challenges say about the realities of the live music industry. Rachel, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I wanted us to start, and I kind of know the answer to this since you and I have talked at length about this story, but what made you want to dig into this? You had attended Lovin Life a couple of times, I think, or maybe both times the festival was here in 2024 and 2025. So clearly you are a live music fan, but what made you want to look into this story?
Yeah. So as you said, I'm a huge lover of live music, kind of a concert enthusiast. And yes, I did go to the festival both years and really enjoyed it both times. But since I was there both years, the second year, it was noticeably not quite as full. But even so, literally, as we were all coming home from the festival that year, they sent out a notification about what the dates of the festival would be for the following year, for 2026. And so the anticipation was still there. Presumably the festival was still going to happen. But then slowly the social media account for Lovin Life tapered off. It started to go quiet and people were starting to wonder what was going on. And then kind of around the time they should have been starting to announce some things for 2026, they announced, it was in December, I believe, they announced that it was going to be on pause, as you said. And so we waited for a little bit to see if they were going to elaborate on that and kind of give the public any sort of explanation, because people were really looking forward to its third run, but that never came. And so I decided to take a stab at it and see if I could kind of figure out maybe some reasons why that happened.
And it feels like it maybe on its face should be a straightforward answer, but I think your reporting kind of illuminated the fact that it's not. There's probably a lot of reasons why this festival is on pause. And can you sort of give us an overview of what you learned through the reporting process and some of the folks you spoke with that kind of gave us a little bit of insight into why this festival might be currently on pause?
Yeah, so really what I found is that there's not one singular answer. It's more of layers of reasons all working together. So one of the reasons is just the fact that Southern Entertainment is an independent local promoter. In January of 2025, Operate Entertainment did acquire a majority stake in Southern Entertainment, but it's still, Southern Entertainment still operates very much more local festivals. They have Carolina Country Music Festival, for example. Lovin Life is very much still a Charlotte music festival. And so it's very difficult for independent promoters and these local festivals to kind of compete with powerful promoters like Live Nation. And so in 2025, that was definitely the case. In Uptown, in the exact same weekend, Kendrick Lamar and SZA were having their sold out concert at Bank of America Stadium. And so that provided a lot of competition and definitely, from sources that I talked to, drew some people away from Lovin Life Music Fest that year. People who may have gone ended up going to the Kendrick concert instead. On top of that, people were disappointed in the lineup, I think, as we previously said. And that was very clear just from looking at social media comments. People were not as enthusiastic as they were the first year. They saw it as kind of a letdown. people were complaining that the headliners were people kind of past their prime or more for an older demographic. That also contributed to it. Again, maybe a reason why people decided to go see Kendrick Lamar instead. On top of that, Lovin Life did not receive a ton of support from the city of Charlotte or the county. So for both 2024 and 2025, Southern Entertainment did not get cash incentives or in-kind services from the city or the county. The Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority gave $200,000 to Lovin Life. So that was $400,000 total. But the city itself and the county did not give a ton of extra support, which can be critical for a local festival.
Did you find in your reporting that it's really critical for local governments and other groups to financially or otherwise kind of support festivals like this in order for them to be successful? Or do you think there were some other factors, including, like you said, there are some very well-heeled, well-capitalized players in live music that maybe make it difficult for a small independent group to successfully put on something like Lovin Life? But I guess how much of an impact do you think the city and county maybe have in whether or not a festival like this can make it?
Yeah, so one of the sources that I talked to was named Marty Elliott. She's a Greenville-based venue manager, and she has a lot of experience booking artists for music festivals. And she was saying to me, definitely for bigger cities, they tend to support more so sports tourism and convention tourism over music tourism and arts tourism. And so that can be a huge setback to any local festival trying to really get their feet under them, especially in those first few years. And she was saying that also, if Lovin Life does intend to come back, the critical thing that would make that a success would be if they're getting more support from the city and county. And so far, they have not indicated, at least publicly, that they're going to do that.
And I know you reached out to Southern Entertainment multiple times, and they did not get back to you for comment or provide any sort of insight into the reason why they're pausing the festival for 2026. But in talking with so many folks around this, is there any can you shed any light into maybe what the thought process might be for Southern Entertainment? I know the big question is that everyone wants to know is Lovin Life going to come back next year or in a future year? And I guess from your reporting and talking to folks who know either Southern Entertainment's thinking potentially or just know the industry kind of more broadly, is there any chance, do you think, that this festival could come back?
Yes, so there is definitely a chance. Things are still kind of up in the air right now. And again, since I wasn't able to get in touch with someone from Southern Entertainment or Opry Entertainment, didn't get an answer from their mouths. But I did speak with Tarek Bakari, who is a former Charlotte City Council member who helped kind of coordinate some things with the festival, just because he's a huge live music fan and just wanted to help out kind of as an extension of his city council duties at the time. And so he was telling me that he knows for a fact that they still very much want it to be a pause. And I think you kind of saw that adamance when Bob Durkin previously spoke to the Ledger. He talked to us on the podcast right before Lovin Life's inaugural run. And his passion was very clear, his passion for the festival, how he could get back to the community through the festival. And the fact that this had been in the works for a really long time. Again, all that is very clear. So I think they definitely do still want it to be a pause. It's just up in the air about whether that's even feasible. Because again, especially after you suddenly went on pause without really giving any explanation why, that could also erode some of the public's trust in buying tickets for a festival like this again. As I previously said, this could really only be feasible with the help of the city and county, with the backing of them.
And I guess I'm curious, I'm a little biased in this because I'm someone who loves going to live music, just like you. I love going to music festivals. And the fact that Charlotte finally got one in 2024, I was so excited. I'm like, oh, like Charlotte's made it. Like in my mind, like, I think it's cool that we have so many major league sports teams here. But then this was like another element, another layer of, I've arrived moment for Charlotte. And I think even one of the artists you spoke with, it was a big I've arrived moment for her. musicians. So, what does it mean for Charlotte to have something like Lovin Life? Maybe especially given how successful it was in year one with the sort of headliners that they were able to bring in. Was it a signifier that Charlotte could compete with other similar or even larger size cities as far as its offerings, its amenities, its tourism sort of appeal potentially? What do you think having a festival like that it says about Charlotte?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely signifies that Charlotte was more serious about becoming more of an arts hub. Charlotte has been trying to position itself as that for several years now. But I think a lot of people were very much of the opinion that Charlotte needed an annual music festival that would really kind of help cement its place as more of a music hub. And I think now people feel like more or less it is back to square one. Like people had been, even just from seeing people comment things like this on social media, Charlotte had several music festivals that kind of came and went, but then eventually they tapered off. And I think that now, since this pause has been announced, people are afraid that this is kind of a continuation of that trend. But I think definitely Lovin Life was headed in a direction of putting itself on the map as more of a musical hub.
Makes sense. Yeah. And I'm wondering through your reporting, if you ever got the sense that Charlotte as a city or Mecklenburg County overestimated its ability to host something like this. Like you said, we've had music festivals before, but this felt like a much bigger kind of venue, a much bigger kind of presence, 80,000 people the first year. It seemed to go off without a hitch both years as far as the resources required to host a festival like this. But I guess you get the sense from your reporting and in speaking with folks about this, was Charlotte over its skis at all in trying to host something like this? Was that a factor at all in why Lovin Life may have struggled in the past maybe year or so since last year's festival?
I was also wondering this. And so I tried to figure out if the police department, for example, was having any difficulties with providing safety and security those weekends, if maybe that had a role in the pause. But it seemed like the city itself was well equipped to handle the festival both years. There were no major incidents either year, including the second year where they had two huge events the same weekend, the festival and the Kendrick Lamar concert. So it wasn't so much of a question of whether the city was able to handle it, so much as whether something else had happened kind of behind the scenes. I did submit public records requests to the police department to see, if they were having any difficulties preparing for the festival, specifically for year two. And it seemed like they had safety plans in place for a considerable amount of time. They were kind of finalizing some things the weeks leading up to the festival, but it seemed like they had it all pretty under control. So yeah, I would say it wasn't so much of a question on the city not being able to handle it. It was more so what happened on Southern Entertainments or what aspects of the music business in general contributed to this.
We'll be right back to the conversation. Today's episode is presented by PBS Charlotte's Unspun program, discussing what politicians are thinking but not saying. I also found it interesting that in the first year, the festival organizers were very up in front about their economic impact, the number of people who came to the festival.
Mm-hmm.
I think they reported $32 million in tourism spending in the city the first year in 2024, and over 86,000 attendees across the 3 days, which, those are great numbers. Those are numbers that, people like the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority and others love to tout when they say Charlotte's got it all. But then in year two, we didn't really get any insight into the economic impact or attendees. Is that correct? Is that basically, is it unknown how many people came in year two or what kind of economic impact the 2025 festival might have had?
Yes, that's correct. So for year two, we don't know anything about the economic impact on the city. We can probably assume that it's about the same, especially because there was a massive concert happening that same weekend. As I've said, along that same line, it will be difficult to ascertain how much of that overall impact was because of Lovin Life and how much of it was because of the Kendrick Lamar concert. But regardless, we were not given that number. Southern Entertainment did not present that number like they did for the 2024 run. They also did not come out with a number of attendees for year two. They had said that ticket sales were in line with the previous year, but then again, several other journalists in previous reporting, but also myself, just as an attendee of the festival both years, kind of noted that year two, it was noticeably a little bit emptier. And so that could mean that people were buying significantly less tickets. It could also mean that people were just coming and going rather than staying for all day of every day of the festival. Again, probably, that could relate back to people being a little bit less impressed with the lineup. But yeah, overall, year two's figures are definitely a little bit more of a mystery. However, one source that I talked to that kind of has some inner knowledge of the festival said that they have a conservative estimate of about 5,000 tickets that were lost that weekend. So tickets that they anticipated they would sell that they did not end up selling.
Yeah, that's pretty significant when you think about, I know it depends on, whether you get general admission or VIP or the number of days or whatever, but assuming conservatively, I would imagine at least, I don't know how much tickets went for, but a couple of hundred probably for most tickets if you're getting a 3-day pass or something. That really adds up if you're thinking conservatively 5,000 tickets. That's a big economic loss potentially. So I know that, yeah, we don't have those numbers and Southern Entertainment hasn't come forth with what that looked like, but I could imagine that they saw quite a dip maybe in financial performance compared to 2024's festival. You mentioned this earlier, but I wanted to get back to it real quick. Obviously, I think this story kind of is another example of how challenging it is to make it in the live music and the music festival industries, which are, separate but related. Was there anything that you discovered through your reporting about these industries that maybe most Charlotteans don't realize or understand? It's an industry not all of us have the sort of inner workings of. We don't know the inner workings of, but it's something that I think those of us who go to concerts deal with in sort of a very external or secondary way. So is there anything that it came up in your reporting that you think like would be helpful for people who go to these festivals or go to live music regularly should understand about kind of how these industries operate and why it's so challenging for an independent group like Southern Entertainment to make potentially something like this work?
Yeah, I think it all comes back to the market dominance of major players such as Live Nation.
Almost exclusively Live Nation.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in Lovin Life's case, I mean, that would be the most obvious kind of competitor for year two, which was also the year that it was a bit emptier. So yeah, I would say it's not quite as simple as just easily finding artists who your audience is going to like and just putting on this festival. I mean, you're already kind of limited as to which artists you can book. So that's exacerbated by things like radius clauses, which is a form of non-compete that prohibits artists from playing venues within a set distance of another venue for a certain amount of time. So hypothetically, a Southern Entertainment or any other local or independent promoter wanted to book an artist who had a contract with someone like Live Nation that included a radius clause, then that artist could potentially be unavailable to play Lovin Life. And so all of these things kind of add up to make things a little bit more challenging for these independent promoters. And on top of that, Charlotte is definitely a hub for Live Nation. Live Nation owns or operates several big music venues in Charlotte. So that could potentially even further limit the pool of artists who would be available to play. So I guess the main takeaway for people who are disappointed that Lovin Life's not coming back for 2026 at least, and who are wondering why, is really that the music business is cutthroat like any other major business. So yeah. Does that make sense?
It does. No, you explained that very well. I guess kind of wrapping up here, the question maybe on everyone's mind, which might be hard to answer, but would just be curious your thoughts. Is there still a path for Charlotte to be a true music festival city?
I think there is. I think, as I mentioned earlier, it really comes down to whether the city and county, especially the city, is going to kind of step forward and, I don't want to say put their money where their mouth is, but if they're willing to step forward and contribute more to Lovin Life to make it that annual music festival that a lot of people in Charlotte have been saying the city really needs. As I said earlier, whether the local government is willing to support a festival can really make or break it. And I think especially after a pause, it's going to be probably a little bit of an uphill battle for Lovin Life to return, but that hill would be made a lot easier to climb if the city helped them out more than they have for 2024 and 2025. And I think a lot of people feel like it would be a huge missed opportunity for a festival that was so well-received like Lovin Life to just disappear. It brought a lot to the city, had a huge cultural impact. And it was great not only for music lovers and also local artists who really wanted exposure for their music. It was great for local businesses. It was great for all the hotels. So I think it would just be a shame if the city did not kind of take advantage of that opportunity and try to make sure that the festival comes back. And I think that that would be the best way to ensure that it does.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Uptown leaders have been talking so much about, even 6 years after the pandemic, bringing that energy back to Uptown. And I think the 3 days that Lovin Life was here in 2024 and 2025 certainly showed that, this is another way to sort of do that if the festival comes back and if it remains in Uptown. Well, Rachel, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and for all your great reporting on this topic. I know it's something that a lot of people are talking about, and we've gotten good feedback on the story. So thank you again for taking the time to chat with me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening. For more information about the Charlotte Ledger, visit thecharlotteledger.com. This episode was produced by Lindsay Banks. Today's episode was presented by PBS Charlotte's Unspun program that tells you what politicians are often thinking but not saying.
QueenCityPodcastNetwork.com.